Welcome back to Mr. Newton's Neighborhood. It's the second and final part of Debunking Conspiracy Theories. Today we'll discuss signs of conspiracy theories and why they are bullshit. 2 weeks ago, we talked about cognitive errors we all have that make us all susceptible to falling for conspiracy theories, so if you missed that, check it out first. The first big red flag of a conspiracy theory that we'll talk about is falsifiability or refutability. So always ask, is the conspiracy falsifiable? In other words, ask, can anything prove it wrong? In logic and science, a claim must be falsifiable, which means it can be proven false given new information. For example, you can claim all redheads have green or blue eyes. All it takes to falsify that is to find a redhead with brown eyes. A conspiracy theory is often unfalsifiable, which means it cannot be proven false, or true for that matter. For example, you cannot prove that fairies don't exist. Go ahead, try it. Give me evidence that there's no such thing as fairies. You can't. Since there's no evidence for or against fairies, you take the default position that they're not real. If something else has no evidence for or against it, it's unfalsifiable, and your logical conclusion should be that it's probably not real. Okay, for another example, have aliens abducted humans or visited the planet Earth? At this point, alien visitation and abduction is not falsifiable. All we have are some people's stories, and in science, testimonials aren't evidence. There's no physical proof that aliens have abducted humans. It's possible, but without evidence, our default should be that it probably hasn't happened. However, it's rarely that simple with a conspiracy theory. They often do assert specific evidence which can be falsified, and that's a good thing, because it means we can take their evidence and prove it wrong. In science, if stronger evidence goes against a claim or disconfirms it, then it must be thrown out or reworked. This is why science works. It has built-in self-correcting mechanisms that help weed out human bias. You're watching this video because shit that didn't work was thrown out and stuff that worked was kept. Somewhat related to falsifiability, a conspiracy theorist often claims that any evidence against their claim is actually evidence for it. For example, if you point out the fact that there's no wreckage that an alien spaceship crashed in a location that they insist one did crash, they say, "Ah, see, they hid and destroyed the evidence." Absence of evidence is not evidence. If you ever hear someone argue that evidence was destroyed or hidden, that's not evidence, that's a story. It's also a huge red flag and a common trait of a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theorist will often use the argument from ignorance fallacy, also known as the appeal to ignorance fallacy. They say that because you can't disprove a claim, it must be true. Belief should come from something with tangible evidence, a positive, not a negative. So, no saucer wreckage, no evidence one crashed. How about unexplainable phenomena? Unexplained doesn't mean, I don't know, therefore it's the Illuminati. It just means, you don't know. You don't fill in the mysteries with what supports your beliefs without evidence. That's just forcing your claim into where you want it to be, rather than following the evidence and seeing where it leads. And tying into what I just said, you can always ask, can the conspiracy ever be proven? So, if every time something is brought up that disconfirms their claim, do they move the goalposts and put up a barrier? They're hiding it. They're lying. It's a cover-up. They're trying to keep you stupid. They've infiltrated every level of government and used jet contrails and water fluoridation to keep everyone dumb. None of that is evidence. And when they do have positive evidence, is it as good as the conventional model? Let's take the flat earthers, for example. Nobody takes them seriously, so this is an easy one. Yes, there are people who actually believe the earth is flat. No joke. There's loads of positive evidence that supports the earth being a sphere, but little to nothing that it's flat. In fact, flat earthers have to flat out disregard known phenomena like gravity because it goes against their ideas. And their alternative models to gravity, like magnetism or that we're on a disk moving upward, has no evidence to support it. They have to excuse away everything disconfirming with empty claims like, NASA's lying and creating misinformation, they're covering it up, all the governments are in on it and guarding the edge so we can't get to it, or simply just saying, gravity is a lie. Gravity is a lie. They really believe this. Yet, they have zero math that disconfirms gravity. So none of that is confirming evidence. The best thing the flat earthers have are some douchebags pointing a laser for a couple of miles across water and saying, that proves it's flat, without one single thing that disconfirms our current model. And when you show them that their stupid laser experiment is faulty, then you're often accused of being an agent or sheeple. Gravity flat out falsifies their claims, but they just deny gravity exists so they can hold on to their stupid idea. If the Earth is flat, where's the photos? Oh, there aren't any. Every government has people guarding the ice wall that surrounds the edge. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to sneak past the soldiers guarding the ice wall that the government is hiding from us so I can get the first picture of the edge of our flat Earth. Of course, they may ask you, show me photos the Earth is round. So you do. And they move the goalposts and say, they're Photoshop. Conspiracy theorists are great at moving the goalpost. And of course they have no photos of the Earth being flat, so they hold you to a double standard. Imagine if someone claimed germs don't exist, and their argument was, you can't see germs and touch germs. Show me a photo of germs. So you show them microscopic images, right? And they say, it's Photoshop. Then they tell you, prove germs exist. So you tell them about germ theory and show all sorts of science that confirms it. And they respond with, it's all just lies, and Big Pharma created all of that as propaganda so they can make money off of medicine. That's exactly how the flat earthers work. I just made up that conspiracy theory about germs off the top of my head, and if you don't understand all the nuances of science and logical thinking, and you have a proclivity toward conspiracies, I could easily convince you that my germ conspiracy is true. I've gone through the details and the math with flat earthers extensively in online debates, which is really a waste of time, and I know this, but it doesn't sway them in the slightest, because it's based on a belief system that they hold personal, not data and facts, which brings up another point. What's the motive for the conspiracy? This is a big one. Ask a flat earther, for example, why would the government spend billions of dollars on a massive cover-up? There's your motive. It's not evidence-based, it's belief-based. But seriously, go ask a flat earther what the government's motives are for covering it up, and you're in for some hilarious answers. I've even heard a few slightly different stories, but they all are 100% hilarious. And everything is a lie to make us all atheist consumers. The basic answer for most of them is that it's to get people not to believe in the Bible and create atheists. Well, if that's the case, then they're wasting billions of dollars. People aren't leaving their church because the Earth is a globe, and less than 3% of the world population is atheist. I mean, if you tell a Christian the Earth is a globe, they don't say, "What? It's round? Jesus is a lie." They say, duh, of course it's round. Of course, if you have actual physical evidence that goes against their claim, or that disconfirms and falsifies it, they may say that it's planted. There's a big one there. My next point is a frequently used debate tactic that I think is hilarious. It is to accuse someone who's debunking their theory as being part of the conspiracy. For example, while debating flat earthers, I'm going to use them again because they're funny. While debating flat earthers recently, I got called things like an agent, a shill, and a lobbyist. Once again, this is completely meaningless and adds nothing to their claim that the Earth is flat. Whether or not I'm an agent is irrelevant. You have no evidence to support that I am or am not one. It's just an empty accusation. I could claim that you're wrong because you're a vampire, and that strengthens my argument just as much as calling me an agent strengthens yours. None. Just for the record, I'm actually a very high-ranking member of the Illuminati, helping plot the New World Order. Go ahead, prove I'm not. You can't! I've been called an agent and a lobbyist, then been called a pawn and a nobody by the same person. So sometimes their meaningless accusations are even contradictory. What's more likely? That I'm an agent for NASA, or that I'm just some ordinary douche with a YouTube channel? I'm just a douche with a YouTube channel. Anyway, accusing someone of being part of a conspiracy is basically just an ad hominem attack, and a really weak one. When you commit an ad hominem fallacy, it means you're attacking the person and not the argument. It's an attempt to discredit one's character, but it doesn't matter if someone is a lobbyist, atheist, Christian, a nobody, a pawn, a high school dropout, or a government scientist. These attacks are just a distraction that do nothing to strengthen their point. Conspiracy theorists might also use what you're not to make an attack. For example, you're not a scientist, you're not a pilot, you're not a teacher, you're not a mechanic, and so on. They may even ask, what are your credentials? What are my credentials? Facts, asshole. My credentials are facts. You don't need to be a physicist to cite physics as long as your math checks out and you're not misrepresenting it. They may bring up anything about you personally or your character, true or not, in order to discredit you.
We're liberal.
But like I said, this does nothing to strengthen their argument or weaken yours. If you are convicted of armed robbery, but your science and data is solid, your felony does nothing to discredit you. It's irrelevant to the debate. A couple months ago, I responded to a 9/11 truther post with links debunking the claims. I didn't have time to debate because, ironically, I was writing the show, which is 2 months late. I got a reply with a string of ad hominem attacks. First, he attacked me because I guess he thought Newton was a fake last name. It's not. My real last name is Newton, and no, I'm not related because Isaac Newton was a virgin. Then he said he wanted to hear it in my own words and opinions. That's a common tactic. When they say they want to hear it in your own words, it's just them giving themselves a loophole or an excuse to not look at disconfirming evidence. And who the hell has time to write an essay on every conspiracy theory Facebook post? Anyway, he then called me a troll, an asshole, and said I was gaslighting. It was a long response full of fallacious attacks with little to no actual information in favor of his point. He finally brought up the way that the towers fell. So that was something that I could use because it had substance to debate with. Hooray for physics! I would also like to, at this point, since I'm sidetracking a little, point out that this is not a valid argument, and it is certainly not evidence for your conspiracy theory. Laughing emojis and telling people they're stupid doesn't add weight to your point, it just shows that you have no point. You'll probably also run into the argument from authority fallacy while debating conspiracy theorists. The argument from authority is using something someone said who is an expert in a specific field, but it's generally not an expert in the related field of the topic under discussion. Besides, it's the data that counts, not who said it. This is why I love science. In science, there are no authorities, just specialists. And the scientists are well aware that these specialists have biases and faults, since they are only human. This is exactly why scientists have their work peer-reviewed to weed out bias and faulty human reasoning. Science is a process, not a person. Scientists use this process to find answers to questions, make discoveries, and so on. Of course, you may quote brilliant scientists or anyone else for that matter, just make sure that it's applicable and backed up by facts and data.
We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Buy stuff.
We now return to Mr. Newton's neighborhood.
And speaking of questioning authority, although you should question authority, that doesn't mean authority is inherently evil or wrong. And contrary-wise, that doesn't mean that they're always good and right. Sinister authority brings us to our next big red flag. This flag is so big it's hard to miss. It's them or they. The them or the they are the agents acting behind the scenes of a conspiracy, often world control groups like the Illuminati or government agencies doing mass cover-ups.
Because it's a big joke to the New World Order, all the things they're doing to you, and how childlike you are.
As Michael Shermer stated in his book The Believing Brain, the agents behind the pattern of a conspiracy are often elevated to near superhuman power to pull it off.
You're literally dealing with a psyop Satanist with black op command forces predicting the future.
The they could be anyone from secret agents in the government to world leaders to big business CEOs, secret societies, and even rock stars. I once heard a conspiracy that George W. Bush and Britney Spears were part of the same satanic cult. The they could even be reptile overlords. No shit, this is a real conspiracy theory. An advanced alien race hiding among the rich and powerful with a plan to brainwash and enslave the human race. They're disguised with things like holographic masks. If this sounds stupid to you, that's because it is.
We are gay reptoid space alien lovers. We are gay reptoid space alien lovers.
If a conspiracy theorist doesn't think you're an agent or a plant, they may just accuse you of being closed-minded or brainwashed. I can't even count the number of times I got called brainwashed. I know the truth, since I'm not brainwashed like all you sheeple. This is not a valid argument. It gives no credibility to their claim, it's just a baseless attack. Barraging a person with insults doesn't make you right, it just makes you an asshole. And it often seems to make the conspiracy theorist feel superior by calling people brainwashed sheeple. The superiority they sometimes feel may be because the conspiracy theorist often sees themselves as part of a small group of elite who are able to see through all the brainwashing propaganda, and they feel that they are heroes of sorts, shedding light on the deception of them.
Ignore me at your peril. I am here as a watchman to warn you. I'm not here doing anything but opening the blinds to wake people up. You don't like the light, do you?
A conspiracy theorist often sees only evil. The motives behind the conspiracy are almost always evil and are control and power driven.
They're in there like Sauron or Sauron and just dark sorcerers, total power.
Just because some corporations and politicians are crooked doesn't mean they all are, and that there's a conspiracy behind every little thing. That brings us to complexity. Another telltale sign of a conspiracy theory is how complex the theory is. The theorists generally have a very complex theory rather than the simple, commonly accepted explanation for the event or phenomena behind their conspiracy. They fail to apply the Occam's razor principle, which states the best explanation is usually the simplest one that requires the least unsupported assumptions. i.e., when you hear hooves galloping, do you think horses or unicorns? With complex conspiracies, ask, why do it the hard way? The more complex a plan, the less likely it is to succeed. Conspiracy theorists are usually unnecessarily complex. Michael Shermer put it best in his great courses lecture on conspiracy theories. He said, the more complex the conspiracy and the more elements involved for it to unfold successfully, the less likely it is to be true. The more people involved in a conspiracy, the less likely they will be able to keep silent about their secret goings-on behind the scenes. Most folks involved in Watergate blabbed. Now imagine the amount of people it would take to keep silent about faking the moon landing or the flat earth. Every government would have to be in on it. How about hiding a cure for cancer?
You're gonna get cancer and you're gonna die, and you're gonna thank the government, and you're gonna cower when the police in black uniforms come and give you the shots forcibly.
Almost everyone will get cancer if they live long enough. Odds are you have a loved one who's had cancer. Do you think that this cure would be kept secret if one of these protectors of the cure had a loved one who was dying of cancer? What about Steve Jobs? He's rich and powerful. He could pay just about anything for a cure, but he still died. The more people involved, the more likely people will talk. The more complex the plan, the less likely it is to succeed. Now on to pattern seeking. As humans, we all have a great ability to find patterns. This is quite beneficial for us, but it often leads us to see patterns that are not there.
Oh! Now I get it! Everything has a hidden meaning! FOX stands for Fans of Xenophobia. Actually, that would explain a lot. InfoWars stands for Illuminati News Fools Oblivious Wacky Asinine Rabid Sheeple. Aha! You're just a tool of the Illuminati, InfoWars consumers, and there's even more proof in Alex Jones's name, whose initials are AJ, which is an acronym for Anti-Jesus. So Alex Jones is really the Antichrist. But that's not all. Alex Jones' initials have a double meaning, and also stand for All Jello, which is what he's clearly made of. See how that works? You're pattern seeking.
We talked a little bit about pareidolia in our episode on debunking ghost photos. Pareidolia is seeing visual patterns and hearing sound patterns that aren't there. The visual patterns are often seeing faces where there aren't any, like the man on the moon. With sound, for example, it could be something like hearing voices in a recording of white noise. Conspiracy theorists often point out visual patterns. For example, a landing site for ancient astronauts. When something looks designed, we often have a tendency to assign it a designer. But visual and audio patterns, pareidolia, aren't the only patterns we see. The conspiracy theorists' bread and butter are connecting dots that don't causally connect. To quote Michael Shermer again, he's just so quotable, damn it. Given a data set large enough, you can find any pattern you like. Connecting dots that don't causally connect. We don't live in a black and white world. It's not as simple as good guys versus bad guys. Bad shit happens, and that makes our brains very uncomfortable. So we create patterns and narratives, stories, to make our brains feel more at ease. These narratives usually fit our preconceived worldviews and beliefs. So, when connecting the dots, make sure the dots legitimately connect. Ask, are they connecting dots that don't causally connect? In other words, are they putting things together that are connected by actual evidence? Or are they connecting dots with talk of conspiracy? Sometimes shit just happens. Also ask, is there a paper trail? With the Snowden leaks, for example, he had a paper trail, and he participated in it. It wasn't just some baseless, unfalsifiable claim made by connecting dots with conspiracy talk rather than evidence. And, related to the paper trail, where's the smoking gun? Conspiracy theorists don't have a smoking gun. In some cases, that's quite literal, like the JFK assassination conspiracies. Alright, next. Conspiracy theorists also like big events to have big causes. It's hard to imagine 9/11 being pulled off by a handful of pissed off religious extremists. It seems like such a small cause for such a huge event. Same with the JFK assassination and Lincoln assassinations. It's hard to imagine that the leaders of the free world could be killed by just some douchebag. Or how about Princess Di being killed by a drunk driver? Remember, powerful people are still only human, and they are just as susceptible to mundane deaths as the rest of us. No matter how powerful and influential someone is, they're still housed in our fragile human bodies. Anyone could fall and break their neck, and anyone could get hit by a drunk driver. But the conspiracy claims don't have to be grand and global. It could be motivated by profit, because we all know people do messed up shit and treat people awfully for money, control, and other selfish motives all the time. A good example of profit-motivated conspiracy theory is put forth by the anti-vaxxers, who claim vaccines are dangerous chemicals and can cause things like autism. Cures make money too. And besides, even if that were true, which it isn't, would you rather have an autistic kid or a dead kid? Also, watch out for the correlation and causation fallacy. This fallacy is a pattern-seeking error that conspiracy theorists, as well as the rest of us, commit often. Confusing correlation and causation is where you mistakenly associate two things that just coincidentally happened at the same time. A funny example of this I heard from, I think it was Brian Dunning, was most people in China eat rice, and most people in China are short and have dark hair, therefore, rice makes you short and have dark hair. This is obviously not true. A great example of confusing correlation and causation that I should have used was vaccines, since it's a conspiracy theory causing autism. The symptoms of autism happen to manifest itself around the same time children get vaccinated. Two things happening at the same time, not related. And this brings us to our next point, after-the-fact reasoning, or hindsight bias. Hindsight bias, or after-the-fact reasoning, is exactly what it sounds like. We reconstruct the past to fit with our present knowledge. Any asshole can say how something should have been handled after the fact. 9/11 truthers, for example, like to point to a commission report. It was a daily briefing, not a commission report. I don't know why I said commission report. Daily briefing. Which was given before the events of 9/11, entitled Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S. It stated that Al-Qaeda might hijack planes and run them into specific targets. And that sounds pretty freaky. So the conspiracy theorists point to that and say, they let it happen. This ignores the fact that there are reports of hundreds to thousands of potential terrorist attacks, and it's hard to know what's a legitimate threat before it happens, especially if it's something unprecedented like the 9/11 attacks were. That report in particular may not have been considered as seriously as others because nothing like that had ever been done before. Plus, it's inconsistent. You can't claim that the Bush administration let the 9/11 attacks happen in one breath, then say it was orchestrated by the Bush administration in the other. Which is it? That brings up the next point: multiple versions of a conspiracy. A conspiracy theorist will often have multiple versions of a conspiracy, and often they are in conflict with one another. They're generally more concerned that the official story isn't true rather than proving their story is true. People even frequently believe contradicting conspiracies. Another thing conspiracy theorists may do is use science when it's convenient to their claim, but ignore science when it's not. This is cherry-picking the data, and once again, it's confirmation bias.
You can't pick and choose your science. If you say, but that's just a theory, then you don't understand what a scientific theory is. You're probably watching this video on your phone, which wouldn't have been possible without Faraday's theories of electromagnetism combined with Newton's physics and atomic theory. You're literally using complex scientific theories to send dick pics. When you use the GPS on your phone, you're utilizing what we've learned from the theory of relativity. You're using quantum theory when you watch Left Behind on your Blu-ray player. And the list goes on and on.
Guys, watch that Dr. Magnifishit video. It really goes into this point very well. And the last point on conspiracy theories is probably obvious from what we've said so far. And it's that the conspiracy theory usually does not affect the rich and powerful. When hearing a conspiracy claim, ask, does it affect humans? Does it affect the rich and powerful? Are the rich and powerful humans? Yes, they are. So would it affect them? Yes, it would. For example, let's say they're hiding the cure for cancer. But wait, the powers that be still die of cancer. Or take the chemtrails conspiracy, where we're getting drugs sprayed on us by airplanes and jets to keep us brainwashed or for some other evil reason. Once again, the rich and powerful are human and have to breathe the same air as the rest of us, so they would also be affected. Unless they're lizard people, of course. Okay, so this is a lot of info to take in at once, and it doesn't cover nearly everything. So here's a 30-second list of key terms and phrases that'll help everything stick. Okay, are you ready? Brace yourself. Everyone is susceptible. The easiest person to fool is yourself. You're most susceptible during times of uncertainty and fear. Cognitive dissonance. Ideological immunity. Confirmation bias. Evidence against a claim is not evidence for a claim. Absence of evidence isn't evidence. Unknown or unexplained just means you don't f***ing know. Can the conspiracy be proven? Is it falsifiable? Are there barriers to disconfirming evidence, like they hid it, they destroyed it, it's planted? Do they keep moving the goalposts? Are people debunking the conspiracy accused of being in on it? Ad hominem attacks. The argument from authority. They don't want you to know. They control everything. Sinister evil intentions. Unnecessarily complex. Does it affect the rich and powerful? Are they connecting dots that don't causally connect? Is there a paper trail? Is there a smoking gun? Confusing correlation and causation. Are they following the evidence, or are they starting with the premise? After the fact reasoning and hindsight bias. Multiple versions of the conspiracy. Is it global? But most importantly, remember, it's okay to be wrong. Since what we talked about today only scratches the surface of how conspiracy theories work, I'm going to end by recommending some media for further study on this topic. You can find the links to all of these in the description. The book American Conspiracy Theories by the Josephs, Joseph E. Usinski and Joseph M. Parent. The Great Courses Lecture, Skepticism 101, How to Think Like a Scientist by Michael Shermer. And if you want a great source that regularly debunks specific conspiracy theories, as well as pseudoscience and the paranormal, then you should really check out Brian Dunning's Skeptoid podcast. Now, just for fun, go and find out something that you've been wrong about. And don't forget, I need to feed my family.
Mr. Newton's Neighborhood was made possible by viewers like you.
Thanks for watching, be a neighbor, and subscribe.